Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about episode 6 of season 2 of The Mandalorian, chapter 14 I believe it is, and I honestly thought I wasn't going to have a lot to talk about this episode because I heard it was going to be the shortest of the season so far, and it's Robert Rodriguez directing it, so I wasn't exactly sure what to expect from him besides a lot of crazy action because he's known for some giant action, crazy movies like Alita Battle Angel is a great example of the craziness that he can do with action, and that is exactly what you got in this episode. You got 32 minutes of pretty much straight non-stop action-packed episode with some awesome elements of characters that are just absolutely fantastic. So let's just jump right into the spoilers. Of course, that's all my episodes on The Mandalorian has all been spoilery, so spoiler warning for you guys if you don't want to know what happened in this episode, because this was a great episode. So as we saw in the last episode, Ahsoka Tano told Mando to take the child, Grogu himself, the one and the only baby Grogu, to this one planet, I think it's called Tython, to put him on top of this rock, on top of this mountain, so he can basically send out a message to other Jedi to possibly try to get them to train him. And that's exactly what happens in this episode. And I wasn't sure if they were going to go directly to that or if they're going to meander and have another side quest, because we did see a couple episodes previous that Moff Gideon had a tracker set on to his ship, so we knew that they were going to collide at some point. So I thought at some point in space they're going to collide and they weren't actually going to get to that mountain, but they did get to the mountain, and they had a whole little thing with Boba Fett. He finally showed up in this episode fully. He was teased in the very first episode with Cobb Vanth and that entire storyline with the Krayt Dragon, and that was a great episode, and it teased that perfectly, really, like I said in the first episode, and as the episodes kind of progress, of how episodic that this season started to feel, of how Mando would meet these new people or go to some old people, and then he would do like a little side mission for them, or you help me, I help you type situation, and that kind of still happened in this episode. But Boba Fett and Ming-Na Wen's character Fennec came back, as he was also teased in season 1. Boba Fett's been teased like crazy throughout this, so I hope he has a large role throughout the entire series and not just these few episodes that he's been in, because he had a great part in this episode and he just wanted his armor back. That's the sole reason why he was there, and that's exactly what he did. They had a little confrontation with Mando, and let me just say, my gosh, Temuera Morrison as Boba Fett is exactly what I needed for this character. I've always been someone who never liked Boba Fett. Honestly, I would say I liked Jango Fett better than Boba Fett, but I'd even go even further and say I liked Captain Phasma from the sequel trilogy more than I liked Boba Fett, because he just did absolutely nothing in the original trilogy. And I think that's one of my biggest, I guess not complaints, because I love the original movies and I love Empire Strikes Back and he's so great in that one, but he just kind of accidentally gets hit in the back by a blind Han Solo in Return of the Jedi and just flies into the Sarlacc pit and just supposedly dies, and that was it. That's the extent of that character that we got for both of those movies, and it was really unfortunate because he was such a cool looking character, and I understood the type of praise that character got just because he looked so cool, and obviously we got the whole backstory with the Mandalorians because of that in the Clone Wars series. So there's little bits and pieces here and there about this character that we've gotten in the past, but it wasn't until now where, man, this guy's awesome. Just talk about how he takes out these stormtroopers left and right, even more so than, I can't remember the character name, but Donnie Yen's character in Rogue One, where he has that staff and he's whooping around these stormtroopers and smacking them so hard that their armor breaks, and that's Boba Fett just completely annihilated these stormtroopers. Like, man, you would not want to be hit by this guy at all. He was crushing them to pieces. It was awesome action. That's exactly, like I said, why you get Robert Rodriguez to do an episode of The Mandalorian, because he's going to take the action to another level. And then you have Fennec, and I loved Ming-Na Wen. I love her as an actress. She was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and that's where I guess I first encountered her with Mulan. I actually didn't know that she voiced Mulan in the original animated movie, but that is the actress that they brought on for Mandalorian, and I thought she was great in that one episode, even though it was probably the weakest episode of season 1, and probably the weakest episode of The Mandalorian as a whole. That one episode, I believe, is episode 5 of last season, and the Gunslinger episode. And, I really love her as a character, or as an actress, and when they supposedly killed her off in that episode, I was like, man, why would he do that to me? She's so good. But they brought her back, and she had like this robotic stomach, because I guess it's very hard to die in Star Wars. Cough, cough, Emperor Palpatine. Jeez, it's a whole other story. But she's back, and I love that she's back. She's great, and that team up that happened, that just kind of happened because, Grogu's on the mountain trying to summon these Jedi, all these stormtroopers, like endless amounts of stormtroopers. There's one, dropship that unloaded on them, and then a second one that unloaded on them. And this is really yet another example of this show making stormtroopers actually imposing. Like the finale, or the last 2 episodes of Mandalorian last season really showed the stormtroopers in massive numbers when they're fighting against these smaller groups of characters can actually be really threatening, and that's exactly what you felt. Ming-Na Wen's character was actually getting overwhelmed with all these stormtroopers, and she had to kick a boulder to knock out the one guy with the giant turret gun, and that was just awesome. It's such a great, just these stormtroopers, even though they can't hit anything to save their life, literally, they were actually kind of imposing. But it isn't until the dark troopers show up, that was also teased a couple episodes behind. But that's another thing. This episode is called The Tragedy. And yes, guys, that is the title. As soon as that popped up, I was like, Grogu's gone. Grogu is a goner. There's no way Gideon doesn't get a hold of the kid at the end of this episode. And that's exactly what happens. These dark troopers fly down like Iron Man, like Jon Favreau probably planned from the very beginning, which I know the dark troopers were introduced, I think, either in a comic or in something like that. I don't believe they were in the animated shows. I could be completely wrong. I don't know the history of the dark troopers. So guys, let me know what that whole thing is about in the comments down below. I'm really curious. I'll probably end up looking it up anyways. But they fly down, they grab the baby, fly right back up, and also it's kind of interesting to hear that Boba Fett assumes that the Empire has completely fallen. Same thing with Ming-Na Wen. And when he sees the giant Imperial freighter at the end of the episode, he was legitimately shocked by that still being around. And so I'm kind of curious because the Republic is trying to, build out. You see that Gina Carano's character is now officially a part of the Republic once again. And you're just kind of getting these bits and pieces of the state of the galaxy, and I think that's what the show is doing great at. It's 5 years after the events of Return of the Jedi, and so you're getting little hints of what's happening in the galaxy around it just by living through it, by following these characters through Star Wars. And it's not all about the state of the galaxy. It's not all grand scale. The Empire is rising, that type of thing, and it's eventually going to turn into the First Order. They'll probably eventually get a lot more into that. So let's just talk about the scope of where I think this show is heading, which I'm a little hesitant about because, everybody has their mixed feelings about the sequel trilogy. I love the first 2. I think The Last Jedi, yes guys, this might make all you guys click off this video, but I love The Last Jedi, and it's one of those movies where I don't really care if you guys don't like it. If you guys don't like it, I completely understand, and honestly, good for you. Good for you for standing your ground, but it's so annoying that people just tear each other apart over that movie, because it's just a movie. And Rise of Skywalker, what I think that movie failed at most was completely retconning, completely ignoring everything that movie did instead of trying to make it work with The Force Awakens, because you could have made them both work. And what the Clone Wars show did is it made the prequels, which in large part did not work for me, but it kind of brought the entire series together by, fleshing out Anakin's character more, by showing more Obi-Wan, by introducing Ahsoka, and by doing all these things and fleshing out the actual war itself. And through that show, eventually actually made the prequel trilogy better for me, in my opinion. And so that's what I think that this series is trying to do, is trying to introduce that element that the Rise of Skywalker had, and try to find a more smooth transition into that, rather than just, it's the First Order, it's Kylo Ren, and then all of a sudden, bam, the Empire is back, and the Emperor Palpatine is back because Sith Lord dark magic, and that's all the explanation they gave in that movie. But we're about to see the Sith Lord dark magic in this Mandalorian show with Grogu. How crazy is that we're getting this element in this show now? Honestly, I think that this could really improve the sequel trilogy because, like I said, I've said this in every single Mandalorian review, what this show is doing that none of the sequel trilogy movies did was take into account everything in the Star Wars universe. They've taken stuff from the prequel trilogy, like the little robot droids from episode 1, those things on Tatooine. They had references, obviously, to the original trilogy with, that one, the one R5 droid, I believe it was, that Luke almost bought in A New Hope, or having these references like Boba Fett coming back. Like, that's a huge, huge character from the original trilogy coming back, and so you're not ignoring that. And then you have Ahsoka Tano, you're taking from the animated shows, and Bo-Katan from both Clone Wars and Rebels, and you had a reference to Thrawn in last episode. So that was also crazy to hear, because they're taking things from everything. They've even had references to the video games. That is just... They are taking into account everything, and now we're kind of leading our way, and we're getting references, and I believe there's actually some musical cues of Kylo Ren and the First Order theme at the end of this episode with Grogu kind of taking down those stormtroopers with the Force, and really reaching down to the dark side of his own fears. And that was another fantastic scene at the end of the episode to kind of cap everything off. And it was just, they're taking into account everything, and I think that's the main thing that the sequel trilogy was lacking. Was it had so much nostalgia and so much attention brought to the original trilogy, but it ignored everything else, and even ignored the previous movies in its own trilogy, which was a huge bummer. Oh, and another thing that I forgot to mention, the Razor Crest was blown up. That ship has gone through literally hell and back and to hell again in this entire season. It was just completely destroyed after episode 2, and then they finally got it fixed in episode 4 or 5, whatever it was. I think it was 4, and then now it's just completely gone. Like, it's gone. And there's another really sad moment of Mando reaching down and grabbing that ball that Grogu's been obsessed with, and there's no way, there is absolutely no chance. I said this in the last episode and the episode before that, and really all season, there's no way Mando is letting Grogu be trained by any other Jedi. That's not gonna happen. I really don't believe, I think that the show for its entire run will keep Mando and Grogu together, and maybe at the very last, the series finale of The Mandalorian, maybe he finally does pass off baby Grogu to another Jedi, whether that is like a Luke Skywalker or Quinlan Vos. I think people are talking about that character from Clone Wars or from Rebels. I'm not sure which show he was in, but that's the talk of the internets that's going on right now about Mandalorian, is what Jedi is going to come to get Grogu, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Mando is going to encounter Luke Skywalker possibly at one point, because he is the Jedi that's looking for other possible Padawans to take in, and I think that might be exactly what happens, and maybe what Grogu needs is that connection that he has with Mando. So that is what I'm looking forward to in the rest of the seasons and for the rest of this season. I really hope by the finale you have Boba Fett, you have Ming-Na Wen's character, Fennec, you have, obviously you have Gina Carano, and then Carl Weathers, hopefully he comes back, and then Bill Burr, and hopefully get Bo-Katan back, and maybe even bring Rosario Dawson to also come in for the finale and have all of them team up to try to get Grogu back. That would be my dream. I don't think all of them are going to come back, but I think a large part of them will. And I believe that Rick Famuyiwa is directing the next episode, which obviously he directed the episode that introduced Bill Burr, so we are going to get reintroduced to Bill Burr and that entire band of misfits that we got in episode 6 of last season. So that will probably be introduced in this next episode, kind of building the group to try to take down Moff Gideon. And that Darksaber, we better get some cool stuff with the Darksaber in the finale episode. I really want to see Ahsoka and Bo-Katan fighting Moff Gideon for that Darksaber. That would be... Whew. Although, I mean, I barely talked about Mandalorian at all in this episode. I barely talked about it. He's not really in this episode much. He's just kind of there. He gets knocked out. He keeps on trying to grab Grogu from this like force beam that he's creating to summon the Jedi, and he keeps on getting flown backwards, and he gets knocked out like twice, and it's like, what are you doing, man? It's just like, he was just kind of in the background. And the real focus of this episode was on Ming-Na Wen and Boba Fett, which was awesome. I loved the action in this episode. So thanks guys for watching the spoiler review of The Mandalorian, Chapter 14, Season 2, Episode 6, whatever you guys want to call it, the tragedy that is this episode of The Mandalorian. Comment down below your thoughts. What do you think is going to happen for the rest of the season, and what do you think is going to happen to Grogu? But I'm excited about Star Wars. This is very fun to talk about, so comment down below, leave a like, share this video with all of your friends, whoever likes Star Wars. I like to hear all of your guys' thoughts as well in the comment section down below. So thanks guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.